Hi, I'm Mark, and today on Outside Views, I want to talk about the failed migration policy of the British government again, with a few more details than in my last video on that topic. As you know, immigration to the UK has reached a record high. The central promise of Brexit supporters has failed with it. The government had effectively fought the invasion of immigrants across the English Channel, as they put it, but they come into a country in a completely different way now. Rishi Sunak's reaction was quite, let's say, matter of fact. The numbers are too high, it's as simple as that. I'll make sure they go down. The reason for this was the recently released immigration data from the Office for National Statistics, the ONS. The British Prime Minister knew that there was nothing to sugarcoat here. In Great Britain, the new figures are read as a sign of the failure of Conservative migration policy. Last year, net migration, that means the difference between immigration and emigration, reached a new high of 606,000. And for comparison, in 2015, before the Brexit referendum, the figure was 329,000. The Take Back Control promise that Brexit advocates have been repeating like a mantra for years seems to have been broken. What is surprising is that the invasion of immigrants across the English Channel, as Home Secretary Suella Braverman called it, is not responsible for the rise in numbers. In recent months, Sunak's government has committed itself to curbing small boat migrants with harsh rhetoric and a controversial law. Only 45,755 people came to the island via this route last year. A large part, however, is due to immigration through legal channels, as the ONS survey shows. Compared to pre-Brexit times, it is no longer EU citizens who enter the country legally, but those from other parts of the world who make up the majority of immigrants. Of the almost 1.2 million people who came to the island last year, 925,000 came from non-EU countries. Students accounted for the largest share with 361,000, most of them from India, China and Nigeria. They are a lucrative business for the UK because foreign students pay far higher tuition fees than locals. What is explosive is that around 235,000 non-EU immigrants came to the country for work purposes. In 21, there were still 61,000 people, and the numbers reveal a fallacy in the Brexit movement. In the years leading up to the referendum, the UKIP party in particular had railed against Eastern Europeans in Britain, accusing them of taking jobs away from locals. They worked there primarily in the low-wage sector, for example in agriculture or in the construction sector. The island had become a top destination for Eastern Europeans after the EU's eastward enlargement because, unlike many other countries in the Union, Great Britain had hardly regulated entry for work purposes. But 3 years after Brexit, it is clear that there is an acute shortage of workers in Great Britain, especially in the low-wage sector, because neither locals nor EU citizens want to do the jobs. British people are not interested in working seasonally because they need long-term jobs. That was said by Madeleine Sumption, director of the Migration Observatory project at Oxford University. They often do not want to work for low wages either, especially given the skyrocketing cost of living in this country, she said. Because Brexit has made the entry requirements for EU citizens more difficult, they now need a work visa and can no longer make use of the EU right of free movement. These are no longer coming either. In addition, the income thresholds for foreign workers have been lowered since leaving the EU. Sumption believes this makes work far more attractive for non-EU nationals than for those from the Union, as wages are often lower in their home countries. The labour shortage is particularly noticeable in agriculture. Reports of British farmers losing their crops due to a shortage of farm workers are not uncommon. The Ministry of the Interior has therefore continuously increased the quota for seasonal workers, such as those who work in agriculture, horticulture and poultry production. In recent years, and in this year up to 47,000. However, the demand has not yet been met. Only 35,122 entered the country through the seasonal work scheme between March 22 and 23, according to recent Home Office surveys. Most applicants came from Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. Previously, Ukrainians made up the bulk of these workers, but they were increasingly absent due to the war in their home country. The underfunded National Health Service, the British health system, also depends on foreign workers here. Compared to 2022, the number of visas for health and care professions increased by 171%. Most workers came from India, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. Cautious reactions to the development have recently emerged from the ranks of the Conservatives. Attorney General Alex Chalk proposed filling low-skilled hospitality and horticultural jobs with ex-prisoners to reduce immigration. And Home Secretary Braverman said in mid-May that there was no reason why more local workers couldn't be trained as fruit pickers and truck drivers. However, little is being done about this, say critics. Stephen Kinnock, Labour politician and shadow immigration secretary, wrote in a Times op-ed on Thursday that the Conservatives have failed to train local talent and get people of working age back into work to meet the 1 million open to fill vacancies in the UK. The opposition party also accuses the Conservatives of encouraging British employers to recruit from abroad in sectors that are on the UK government's official shortage list. Such may be paid 20% less than their British competitors. Only on Wednesday did the Ministry of the Interior, the Home Office, announce that it would expand the list to include fishing professions. In March, builders, roofers and craftsmen were added there. The Conservatives find themselves in a dilemma that was explained by Anne Kirshen, migration researcher at Queen Mary University in London, and she told this to the German newspaper Welt. To make jobs in the low-wage sector more attractive, the minimum wage would have to be raised, which in turn would add to the already high inflation. Every citizen would feel that when they went shopping. And Tom Brooks, a legal scholar specializing in immigration law at Durham Law School and a Labour member, believes that there's also a political calculation behind this development. He says, the Conservative government has looked the other way on the issue because it knows that the country benefits economically from a healthy flow of migration into the country as it fills precarious jobs. It is cheaper for them to hire foreign specialists for nursing staff than to train them here. For the Tories, the fresh ONS numbers shortly after the historic defeat in local elections at the beginning of May are proving to be another stress test. My constituents' anger and frustration has so far been focused on illegal migration, but that will continue to grow when they see the numbers on legal migration. That was said by the Conservative Martin Vickers. And another Tory MP told Politico, the anger will be evident as we knock on doors in our constituencies this weekend. Actually, Brexit was supposed to dramatically curb immigration to Great Britain. But now the number of migrants is higher than ever. And this is due to the abundance of job offers and the lack of trained British workforces. And Britain has two basic problems. I repeat them from my last video because they're important. The job market is extremely attractive for job seekers from all over the world. It acts like a magnet for more and more migration. And there are not enough trained British workers for the multitude of positions in the industrial and medium-sized sectors. Therefore, the companies like to get cheap labor from outside the island, which does not exactly encourage the motivation to train local workers. And you have to know this context when you study the latest figures for immigration to Great Britain. And as I said, the authorities registered 606,000 net immigration for the last year. And this is the highest number so far. And that says something. So the country is growing every year by about the population of a city like Sheffield. And the consequences are visible everywhere. There is a lack of living space, schools are bursting at the seams, and the health service is overwhelmed, while it's still understaffed. Two factors also favor this development: the humanitarian openness to refugees from Ukraine and the influx from the former Crown colony of Hong Kong, where freedom is facing increasing repression by the Chinese authorities. And many Hong Kong Chinese who have the right to move to the former mother country evade this. For the first time, asylum seekers are also including in the statistics, though. 172,022, but the number of permits granted in 1 year is far behind the ever-increasing backlog of applicants, so that the call for radical solution is growing, such as the deportation of those who have arrived illegally and then to deport them to Rwanda. But the government is embarrassed by these developments. When the Tories first came to power in 2010, they pledged to reduce immigration to around the tens of thousands, as they put it. At the time, it was still said that Brexit would dramatically curb the flow of migrants. It is not known that it is known now that that was a wrong calculation, because even before Brexit, immigration peaked towards non-EU countries, and that really came through today. And Prime Minister Sunak can hardly turn this picture into a positive one until the next election, and you all know that it will probably take place in 2024. But whether Labour could do so is also questionable. But still, this migration policy, there were not more promised unicorns here in the Brexit campaign like on so many other things. And everybody knew that immigration came from somewhere else. I mean, David Cameron, I talked about this in my last video, wanted to get net migration to a maximum of 100,000. Where are we now? 600,000 or more than 600,000. And the fact that people are now mostly coming from India and Africa, the core Brexiteers, which are not very migration friendly, those people, I remember the time when I was living in the UK. And I heard the words in that time already, and that was quite some time before the whole Brexit campaign ever started. I still remember the terms the people used. I have to make one example, although I really don't like this term, but it shows the mindset already existing long before this referendum. Also in some communities there where you usually would expect people to be more open or to know what discrimination means, but I always said that the gay community, for example, is not very open to others as they should be. They're always demanding anti-discrimination, but they do discriminate themselves a lot, even within the community. But also there, but not only there. In the UK, I often heard the word, we don't like packies. And I talked around it a bit to avoid this. But that shows this mindset that was already existing long before the Brexit referendum. And I heard stuff like this regularly when I was living there. And people with a mindset like this really have to go deep into themselves. Discrimination is unacceptable. And I mentioned the gay community in the UK as well on purpose, because especially when you are discriminated, and I bring that back to a member of parliament recently that tried to blame other groups. Don't start discriminating yourself. If you are faced with discrimination yourself, the solution is not to discriminate others. And that's what's happening far too often. And that's why I try every day to avoid this. Some things are getting hammered into your mind all the time, and you have to fight against this. But at the moment, not only in the UK, but also here in Germany, too many people are losing this fight. And we have to fight a mindset like this. No race is better than the other. There is better education for some people, even within all those countries. The better the education for everyone, the better the life of everyone. But there is nothing like some people are better because of their genes or whatever. We here in Germany experienced a time like this, even if they didn't know anything about genes at that time. But that must never happen again. I don't care where somebody comes from. I care about how they behave. Yes, we here in Germany, we have far more immigration than the British. The number of Ukrainians fleeing to Britain was far less than those that fled to Germany, also because of the location. But I don't care. I only care about a few things. The reason why they're coming here, if they're asylum seekers or war refugees, they have a right to stay as long as we can take this. And we still can. And with all the consequences I talked about in different videos about asylum seekers probably staying for life, war refugees going back to their home when the war is over to rebuild their home, and other migrants. They can come for work purposes if we need them, and we need here in Germany a proper immigration law to regulate that. But otherwise they have to leave again if they claim for asylum, but they are no asylum seekers, they just want to come here to work. But that's all I'm interested in. And then I'm interested in how they behave here. If somebody who misbehaves here or breaks the law, I don't care if he's a foreigner or a German. If he breaks the law, he has to be treated according to the law. And I don't care where he comes from. Our right-wing populist fascists from the AfD always want to make fuss when somebody commits a crime that's a foreigner. I don't care. I don't care where he comes from. I know as many German criminal idiots as I know foreign criminal idiots. And it doesn't matter. We have a law for that, and our law must be executed. Our courts are often far too soft on those people, and there we need some changes as well. But it doesn't matter where they come from. They have to be treated according to the law, period. And that's it. But it doesn't matter to me where somebody comes from. But I was preaching enough for today. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.